So a few months ago, I saw a TikTok that went viral, which was saying that all redheads, white redheads, are black men and women, white men and women with red hair are black.
I just need to remind y'all again, everyone who is ginger, who has red hair, those are black people. All gingers are black people. If they have red hair, they are black. You see a white man with red hair, that's a black man. You see a white woman with red hair, that's a black woman. Gingers are black. All gingers.
It went completely viral. And like all TikTok trends, I don't really get that much into it. This was about May, I believe. But I kind of thought to myself, this is going to go south really fast. And it's not clear if the TikTok was meant to be a harmless joke, but obviously in the year of 2025 and who the president is, we can't really just throw around jokes like this, unfortunately. And this made a lot of white gingers feel very welcomed by us, and were sharing stories of how they were bullied and were made to feel ugly or an outcast because of their hair color. Which, it's nice. That's nice that they feel welcomed. But I personally thought that we were just simply talking about black people with ginger hair because black people also do have ginger hair. But this immediately turned into a whole thing where we were saying that actual white men and women with red hair are now automatically black people. I was really still thinking that it was all going to go downhill. And I was right. Because some white people were starting to make TikToks claiming that red hair people were the black people or white people. Then there were people making TikToks of making offensive stereotypes. And worst of all, someone else had to come on TikTok to remind black people, my people, of how there wasn't really always solidarity by bringing up the Halle Bailey Ariel casting controversy of 2020.
Gingers are black. Where was this energy for Halle Bailey when she was Ariel, though? Lock the doors and bar the fucking gates, because I don't remember a single ginger person calling Halle cousin. I remember them saying, not my Ariel, not my Little Mermaid. They were the most pressed group of people harassing this young woman online all over social media, berating her, being racist as fuck to her. Okay, so I know people are going to say, it's a joke, Melissa, take a joke. You're being so serious. When you give people an inch, they're going to take a mile. And you know what? This trend is very telling, because if you ask a non-black person what their favorite thing is about black people, you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, oh, I love that they're great hype people. They make me feel cool. It's all about how black people embrace them and they love it, right? But the embracing doesn't go the other way around. You have people that want and love to be welcomed to black spaces, but they don't want to welcome black people into their space.
We cannot get that mad about it, because we knew this was going to happen. But with all that was being talked about even before that, people are also making a little bit of comparisons or references to how redheaded people also starred in black, majority of black shows like Abbott Elementary and Kim Possible, Raven's Home, or That's So Raven, shows such as that, where there was always this black character and the redhead and a redhead character having some sort of iconic dynamic of friendship, which is true, and I mean it is accurate to an extent, but all this made me think, how did we come to this conclusion of how black people and redheaded people have some sort of solidarity? Because if we're saying that gingers, white gingers, are black, then we're automatically saying that they face the exact same struggles that we faced. And I have to say that's not really the case. However, I'm going to be explaining how there are some similarities to this othering that we both face through how we're presented on screen, white beauty standards, and feeling like an outcast. Then I'm going to be having some tough love moment with my people for a second, and then we're just going to end this off. So, without further ado, welcome back to the Let's Discuss podcast. I'm your host, Nick Marshall, and I basically just talk about whatever I want. And we're going to be talking about this whole gingers are black thing that happened months ago on TikTok. First up, we'll talk about how we're presented on screen. When it comes to representation in the media for black people and white gingers, there's an obvious disconnect due to the factor of race. At the end of the day, white gingers are still white. They still benefit from white privilege, and we do live in a white supremacist society. And we also have to acknowledge that they do face some social otherings because of their rare hair color. Also, black people can also naturally have gingered hair. But how we've been portrayed on screen because of our physical differences that we can't control. For black people, the history of how we've been portrayed on screen has been many of racist stereotypes to promote anti-blackness. In the early 19th century, minstrel shows were extremely popular, where white performers would put on blackface and perform racist stereotypes. Often these minstrel shows have very romanticization of plantations in the South and how glorious those days were. And to this day, that left a huge impact on how people perceive black people, both on screen and in real life. And it wasn't just simply minstrel shows and blackface. It was like everything. It was society in general. It was also the factor of other rules, Jim Crow laws in the South, the Civil Rights Movement, segregation. All these factors did play a factor in both how we were portrayed on screen and how we were treated in real life. And in the golden age of Hollywood, when the effects of minstrel shows were still very strong, super strong, especially in the mid-20th century, and the golden age of Hollywood, it gave way to a lot of stereotypes and limited roles for black actors and actresses. With black women and white ginger women have been portrayed in a similar way, but it's not exactly the same, due to the factor, again, of race. Black women have gone through a lot of tropes in the media, from mammies to Jezebels to sapphires, and the modern strong black woman trope. The two tropes that are most damaging is the mammy and the Jezebel. This is because they show two extremes of sexual exploitation of black women. The Jezebel was created to show black women as hypersexual and insatiable to justify the raping of black female slaves, and the mammy was a desexualized caricature of a black woman who was often portrayed to be dark-skinned, overweight, and made a servant to the white characters to make the audiences not look into that history, because it was mostly portrayed as she was mostly a caricature to make audiences think that during that time when it was most popular, the mid-20th century, that black people enjoyed working for white people. They enjoyed, we enjoyed being servants to white people, which wasn't always the case. A lot of black women in the past, especially in the South, had to work to support their families because they couldn't just make it, black families couldn't just make it on one income alone, just like how white families most places in America did at the time. So those two caricatures were created to justify what was happening in slavery. Because of this, black women have felt the most misrepresented in media due to the misogynoir in society that's been reflected on screen, and mostly just simply in real life, obviously. Whereas with white ginger women, are portrayed in a similar way, but not necessarily the same as black women, because again, race. They are either portrayed as sexy bombshells or another version of the smart brunette, but with red hair. The ginger bombshell is the epitome of the male gaze, and is often serves. Okay. The ginger bombshell is the epitome of the male gaze, and it often serves as a means for that. Red hair women on screen are frequently portrayed as visually striking characters who embody passion, unpredictability, and rebellion. And this can go back to, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, this can go back to biblical text, I think, where red hair is seen as very like fiery and passionate and lustful, and it's very untrustworthy. I feel like I got that wrong, but just correct me if I'm wrong. And due to this rarity of natural, like red hair, is often used as a cinematic shorthand for characters who are unconventional, fiery, or seductive. And its key portrayals of archetypes simply is, it states, the fiery, independent spirit, where red hair is often used to symbolize a character who refuses to conform. And the femme fatale, seductress role, redheads are often cast as dangerous, highly sexualized, or mysterious. And then the intellectual and unique individual. Characters often possesses a quiet underlying strength, such as those played by Molly Ringwald in the 1980s. And also the romantic lead. Red hair is used to highlight intense, emotional, or passionate characters. So there's an obvious difference in how black women and white ginger women have been portrayed on screen. On one hand, the similarity is they have been used as over-sexualized symbols. On the other hand, white ginger women have been given more opportunities on screen to be portrayed in another light too, besides the femme fatale and seductress. They've been portrayed as smart brunettes, the romantic leads. Black women haven't been given that much over the years.
This trope in media completely changed the way that I view dating throughout my life. Obviously, I am referring to the disposable black girlfriend trope. If you don't know, the disposable black girlfriend trope is the trope that a black character, particularly a black woman, is only introduced into the story to further the protagonist's storyline. This character is never the endgame relationship, but more so a stepping stone. The first time I was exposed to this trope was Charlie on Friends. I grew up watching Friends, and as we all know, Friends is not very a diverse show. When I saw Aisha Tyler guest starring as Charlie, a paleontologist, not just a pretty face, but also was so intelligent. She was around for 8 episodes. And of course, I thought, oh my gosh, are we going to get a black character on a predominantly white show, but also a love interest? Nope. Charlie was just a pawn in the Ross and Rachel game. Valerie Gray and Danny Phantom. Valerie was literally a ghost hunter. They were setting up a good enemies to lovers. Sean and Angela are truly the most heartbreaking example of this trope, in my opinion. Boy Meets World was a childhood staple of mine, and Sean and Angela was the first interracial relationship that I saw where a black woman was loved so loudly. I thought they were going all the way, and spoiler alert, they do not. Angela leaves with her dad because her dad is in the military. Also, Angela didn't fit the typical black girl mold in television. She wore so many different hairstyles, protective, natural. She dyed her hair. I think what pissed me off the most about Sean and Angela's breakup is that it wasn't even necessary. The showrunner came out to say that they were too good and too healthy, and if they were endgame, it would take away from Corey and Topanga's storyline. And to really put the nail in the coffin, they brought Angela back for Girl Meets World. And obviously it has been made abundantly clear that Sean has not been able to have a good relationship since Angela. And what does Angela come and do? She gives Sean a pep talk so he can move on with his life and find another love after her. How I Met Your Mother. Out of all of the women that Ted Mosby dated, he only dated one black woman. And the whole reason he broke up with Janet McIntyre is because she was too good. Now, the limit does not exist with how many examples there are of this trope in media, but a more recent one is Mark and Amber in Invincible. He made it very clear from the beginning that Amber was not Endgame, even though they had such a great relationship. They were always setting up Mark and Eve. Now, I haven't read the comics and I have not seen this last season, but it was clear from the start what Amber's purpose was. I really hope we are slowly moving away from this trope because it is very damaging to young black women. We see our favorite shows who already don't have a lot of representation. Then the one time we get to be desired and the love interest, we are just tossed aside. And whether it's intentional or not, it is perpetuating this idea that we are not Endgame, we are not desirable, we are not the person that gets to have our Prince Charming.
Despite all of the challenges and barriers that society and the entertainment industry has constantly set for black women, especially in the early 20th century, there have been characters and also actresses who brought more positive representation for black women and have inspired many. And the first I wanted to talk about, a very honorable mention, is Diahann Carroll. Diahann Carroll was one of the first black actresses to star in her own TV show featuring a black woman who wasn't a mammy or maid. In this TV show, Julia, where she played a nurse named Julia and she was taking care of her son, and we followed her every single week doing that. Her career spans from the golden age of Hollywood, making her film debut in Carmen Jones in 1954, and later on in 1974 she got an Oscar nomination for her role in the movie Claudine. In the 1980s, she played Dominique Devereaux in the soap opera Dynasty as Blake Carrington's sister, and this was honestly her most prominent role because of the significance it still has. Diahann played a rich black woman in a time in America, especially in Reagan's America.
Devereaux.
Let's see. Yes, we have a beautiful junior suite ready for you on the second floor.
Junior suite. I specifically asked for a 2-bedroom suite. I don't sleep in my clothes, nor do I sleep with them. I require 1 bedroom for my wardrobe and 1 for myself. If you don't have a 2-bedroom available, please call another hotel in the area that can accommodate me.
Where society has constantly told black women that they could only be one thing on screen. Dominique was one of the classiest and stylish characters on Dynasty, rivaling Joan Collins' character Alexis Carrington, but the two actresses were friends in real life. Also, Dominique grew up poor, and then she worked hard to achieve her wealth and success, and her character was also a nightclub singer. And Diahann Carroll also was a singer in nightclubs from time to time later on in her career, and she had an album too. So because of the fact that her character Dominique worked hard for her wealth and her success, she was one of the most respectable and more aspirational characters in the show. Also, because of the fact that she played a conniving character, a stylish and also a conniving character, she didn't play into the whole respectability politics in her character. She was just simply herself. She was simply playing a character because of the fact that Dynasty was about rich people behaving badly, and it didn't make much of a difference. It was just simply on brand for the show. All the characters are conniving in some way, and they do backstab each other, and that's just simply on brand for the show. And some people had some fears about that with Diahann Carroll playing a character like that, but she didn't care. She was a very smart woman, and she also raised awareness for breast cancer, and she also unfortunately died of breast cancer. But since then, Diahann Carroll continues to be an inspiration to this day for black women who want to see themselves on screen.
Dominique.
I love
You,
Dominique.
Vixen.
She's wonderful. She's just all, you have the opportunity to play out all of your fantasies and walk around in the middle of the afternoon dressed like this, which is just, who does this? No one does. But Dominique does this.
You really went after Aaron Spelling. I mean, you got this part because you wanted it.
I don't know that that's an admirable characteristic, but it worked. So anything that works, you have to have a kind of admiration for that.
But you crashed his party.
Yes, I did. I've never done that before in my life.
Oh, sure.
Never.
Really?
Never done that before in my life. But I felt it was right. I said, there's only one thing he can say. No. Well, I've been thrown out of better places. So when I called this restaurant, after the Golden Globes that evening, I was informed that Aaron Spelling was having a private party for Dynasty. And the young lady was nice enough to say, "Are you involved in this party, Miss Carroll?" And I said, "Yes." And when we arrived, Aaron said, "Diane." I said, "Aaron." I mean, we really played it.
We really played it. And Dominique was born.
And Dominique was born.
Parts that blacks don't necessarily get.
Isn't that embarrassing for the United States of America?
Yes.
In 1985, for you to have to sit there and make that statement. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed as an American.
But the fight isn't over, is it?
No. No, I'm not saying you're incorrect. I'm only saying it's embarrassing. But nevertheless, it's part of our lives. Yes, it's true.
Where do you think you got all those smarts and that spunk to keep going after it?
Oh, I think this business helps to give it to you. You certainly are kicked around enough. I mean, if you're either two things happen to you. You don't get the message, which is that it's all up to you. It's all your responsibility. You do it. I mean, no one's going to give you anything. Or you complain a lot and you soon fade from...
Another actress who made... Another actress who also gets a mention in this segment is Trina McGee, who played Angela from Boy Meets World. And she is a good example of a positive portrayal of black women in the media. And she entered Boy Meets World. I think she appeared in... She made her appearance in the third season, I think. Third or fourth season in the show Boy Meets World. And the impact of... Okay. And the impact of it was simply... the impact of her in Boy Meets World was... Her character Angela was portrayed as intellectual, compassionate, and more emotionally mature than her peers, and she was crucial in helping Sean grow from a reckless teenager to a more responsible adult. Sean and Angela's relationship was the most meaningful long-term relationship in the show, dealing with realistic, heartfelt storylines that showed his vulnerability. This paved way for a lot of representation, for a lot of girls felt... For many viewers, she was an important, relatable black character who wasn't portrayed as a mean girl, bringing a different perspective to the friend group, who is mostly just white, a largely white cast, and she was the only black person in the room, really. And she also had a baby at the time, and she was taking care of her kid, and also she did her own hair, because no one knew, wasn't really a hair designer who knew how to deal with black hair. So it was pretty tough. Trina McGee did have some negative experiences over the years on Boy Meets World, with her being, again, like I said, she was the only black girl in the cast, and she detailed an encounter with Will Friedle calling her Aunt Jemima, but she later confirmed that there are no hard feelings and she has kept a close relationship with the cast in general. Also, to add more note into her relationship with Sean, it was the first kind of interracial relationship on screen in the 90s, I think. It was a big deal. There was some backlash. I feel that, yeah, there was backlash. There was backlash back then. And it showed a lot of, it showed a lot of black girls that they can be the romantic interest in the show. With gingers, white gingers, a character that came to mind when talking about the role of femme fatale and seductress. I feel like you know the character I'm about to say. It's Jessica Rabbit from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Jessica Rabbit is the blueprint for the male gaze, the bombshell look. In the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit, we are immediately drawn to her looks and how she affects the male characters. And we're also shown at first not to trust her because of her looks, or her mysterious nature, and the fact that she married a toon like Roger Rabbit, which is something that literally everyone in the movie has expressed their confusion about. Like, what is it about Roger that makes a woman like Jessica so attracted to him? And this is something that we see in real life with celebrity couples and people who aren't celebrities. But it's a very common, it's a very common thing, because sometimes people would see like a model looking person with someone who's more average, and you wonder, wait, why are they with them? And that's just what people are like seeing or like thinking when they see Jessica and Rabbit. They're very confused by this couple. It's just kind of funny how they're just so they're like so confused as to like, what does Jessica see in Roger? But like, you see how Roger is such a devoted husband. He loves Jessica just the way she is, and he doesn't love her just for her looks. Obviously he's attracted to her looks, obviously, but it's not like how the other male characters are reacting towards. She's simply their fantasy. And also she's a toon, and he loves her very much. He's so sprung on her, and that was the reason why the events of the movie occurred. That's why Eddie took the pictures of like Jessica playing like patty cake with Marvin Acme. But the characters in general do try to paint her as a gold digger who is using Roger, but in fact, we later on see in the movie, like Roger, she's a very devoted wife.
I'm a pawn in this, just like Roger. Can you help me find him? Just name your price, and I'll pay it.
Yeah, I bet you would. You gotta have the rabbit to make the scam work.
No, I love my husband. You've got me all wrong. You don't know how hard it is being a woman looking the way I do.
Yeah, well, you don't know how hard it is being a man looking at a woman looking the way you do.
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way. Valiant.
I always knew I'd get it in Toontown.
Behind you!
Drop it, lady!
I just saved your life and you still don't trust me?
I don't trust anybody or anything.
Not even your own eyes? That's the gun that killed R.K. Maroon, and Doom pulled the trigger.
Doom?
I followed him to the studio, but I'm so worried about him.
Seriously? What do you see in that guy?
He makes me laugh. My hero. Oh, honey bunny.
Oh, love cup.
Oh, Roger, you were a pillar of strength.
She's a very sweet and devoted. Okay. But in fact, it's the complete opposite. And she, like Roger, is a very devoted spouse, and only went along with the plans of. She only went along with the schemes of She only went along with the schemes of R.K. Maroon to save Roger from being blacklisted in Hollywood, because she said if she didn't pose for those patty cake pictures, Maroon said that Roger will never work in this town again. She's actually shown to be very cartoony, like Roger, so they make a very perfect pair. We see her to be very, like, fiery and also very protective of Roger, and she also just simply puts Roger on like a pedestal, low-key. But like, she just loves Roger very much because she feels herself with Roger. and he simply treats her like a person. Moving on to how black men and gendered hair men have been portrayed on screen. It is a very huge 180 on how we've been portrayed versus how white gendered men have been portrayed. Historically, black men on screen have been limited to stereotypes, frequently portrayed as violent criminals, buffoons, or hypersexualized, often reduced to the white sidekick or athletic token. And while this representation has improved, this legacy of negative stereotypes continues to impact public perception, often emphasizing physical prowess and over intellectual or emotional depth, or really like portraying black men in general on screen with any type of like care or nuance, like they do with the white male characters every single time. But you know, but in comparison, or I guess in contrast to how black men have been portrayed on screen, the portrayal of white ginger-haired men on screen has been historically ranged from undesirable outcasts to quirky sidekicks, often diverging from the typical more sexualized or fiery portrayal of red-haired women. In many media representations, red-headed men are presented as, or to signify, otherness or a lack of mainstream conventionally attractive masculinity. And these common tropes are simply the weird nerdy sidekick, often portrayed as intellectual but socially awkward, or in some cases comic relief, the villain or other. Historically, it says red-haired men has been used to historically red hair has been used in visual arts to suggest deviousness or otherness. So just like in biblical text, I think it goes back to biblical text, it can be seen as like very fiery, passionate, lustful. It's also seen as very untrustworthy, like you can't trust it. Yeah, something like that. And just simply it says undesirable. Headed men have been portrayed as being the butt of the joke. There were plenty of characters that came to mind when I was writing this outline that fit both of these archetypes. One of the two black characters that I have is Lucas Sinclair, played by Caleb McLaughlin in Stranger Things. Lucas is an example of the token. Lucas is an example of the token black friend in mainstream media with a mostly white cast. Lucas is a part of the core four in Stranger Things and is a very smart, logical, loyal, no-nonsense person. The positives in his portrayal is the fact that he is good representation for black people who grew up in suburbia in the 1980s and present-day black people who grew up and live in suburbia. In the early seasons, he did have his own personality, and the topic of him being black wasn't completely ignored in idealized colorblind society. There are some negatives in it that was like, there are some negatives in his portrayal that was overlooked. The fact that Billy was a racist and his anger specifically targeted Lucas, and he even attacked him in season 2 of Stranger Things. But the show never really addressed it more. They never fleshed out the topic more, and the fans just simply overlooked it and very romanticized Billy and kind of excused his racism towards Lucas, and it was very gross. You feel bad for Billy's past because we understand how he ended up like this, but it just didn't excuse what he did to Lucas. Also, a negative to his portrayal, he was reduced to simply being Max's boyfriend, and he is a great boyfriend and a great friend to her, even when they're not together. But we never got more of a personal arc for Lucas. We know the gist of him. We know that he's a smart character. We know that he is a very logical person. He had a lot to do. He had other things going for him than simply just being Max's boyfriend. Instead of trying to appeal to like mainstream audiences and queerbait to oblivion, we could have just simply got more like character studies of the characters and like focus more on that. But unfortunately, Stranger Things did other things, and they just simply did. They could have been doing so much, but maybe that's a good thing, because I don't really like. I don't know. I don't really think I could handle what the Duffer Brothers think black people go through, and trying to like white-splain to us like how we go through our lives through Lucas's point of view. Like I don't really know. But like in general, like Lucas is a pretty good character. I like him. He's a very fun guy. He's a very cool guy. And Caleb McLaughlin is a great actor. Another character that comes to mind who also sort of like fits into like the token black kid, but he's mostly like the white sidekick, is Clyde McBride in the show The Loud House. He is another example of the black best friend, the token black friend in mainstream media. And he also falls into he also falls into the quirky black character trope. Clyde is Lincoln's best friend, and he's an only child to the couple, Howard and Harold. He's very awkward, caring, he's goofy, and he's supportive at the same time. He's always right by Lincoln's side to help him with his passion, to help him with his plans. Like Lincoln, Clyde has a passion for comic books, video games, and science fiction. Clyde is very neurotic, cowardly, cautious, and worrisome. He has asthma, which requires him and his dad to carry an inhaler everywhere. And according to his parents, he can't consume meals with too much sugar or orange juice with pulp. Clyde is allergic to certain kinds of nuts, but not peanuts, it says in his overview according to his overview on the Life is... Okay. Why did I say Life is Strange? On the Loud House fandom page. Okay. However, his dads are afraid he might later develop a peanut allergy. He's also sensitive to gluten. He's agoraphobic. He can show severe signs of altitude sickness because of it. Clyde often panics and overreacts. When he does, he hyperventilates into a paper bag that he carries with him at all times. There's not really like a lot of negatives in his portrayal. He's like the only thing is the black best friend trope. He really is his own character in The Loud House, and it doesn't feel like a diversity checklist. Like The Loud House isn't exactly like a diversity checklist show. It's very like natural. It's very it's very like it blends well, you know, and you feel like when you look at Clyde, he's not like that. The only thing that's really like the only thing I can say about Clyde, that he just simply falls into the black best friend trope. I feel like other people have other notes on this, but that's the only thing that I can say that he falls into. But Clyde does have his own personality. He's not like a copycat of Lincoln. He's just simply like his own goofy self, and we learn more about his family life. We learn like he goes to therapy with Dr. Lopez. That's pretty funny. He's very like in touch with his own feelings. He can be Lincoln's rock, and he can be his friend's other rock. He's just shown to be very like mature and very wise for his own age. And he just knows what to do. He just knows exactly what to do. He's very like particular about his things. Like it's not that bad. Like, not that bad. Moving on to gingers, there is a character that comes to mind that does fit into some of the stereotypes of white gingered men in media. And the character is Richard Cameron, played by Dylan Kuzman in Dead Poets Society. Cameron's characterization is mostly a reflection of how ginger men are portrayed on screen. In the movie, Cameron is a stickler for the rules at Welton, and at times he can clash with other students. Cameron craves validation from authority figures like Nolan and people like Charlie Dalton, even though he is annoyed by him most of the time, and he also has a huge crush on him. That's my headcanon. You can disagree, but that's just my headcanon of Cameron. So we see bits of him kind of struggling to fit into the group, who has known him for a while, but has quickly welcomed the new student Todd Anderson at the drop of a hat, and that can hurt pretty much. Like that can sting. That can sting. Cameron also fits the characteristics of ginger male characters, with him being nerdy, awkward in a way, butt of the joke, and cowardly at the end when he finked on the poets. I would say he's more of like, he's just simply like the butt of the joke. I don't think he's portrayed in an awkward kind of way, and he wasn't really like nerdy. He's just simply portrayed as more of like he's mostly portrayed as like a know-it-all, to be more specific. And also, yeah, just simply like the butt of the joke in the movie and in group settings. And I would say a little bit cowardly in the end when he did fink on the poets. That's how he fits into the characteristics of how people view white gingered men. Another gingered male that does come to mind is Ron from Harry Potter, who is a bit of a warrior and is the quirky sidekick to Harry Potter, and is also the best friend, but he's also like a romantic interest to Hermione. And a minor mention, ginger character who fits into the villain stereotype. If you remember Megamind, the villain in Megamind is Titan, and his real name is Hal Stewart. And in the movie, Megamind is like this villain. So the character Megamind is trying to create a new villain because he supposedly defeated his arch nemesis Metro Man, who's also like a parody of Superman. That's basically Megamind is basically like a parody of like Superman and Metro City. It's like a whole thing. But anyway, he thinks he's defeated his arch nemesis Metro Man, and he tries to create a new superhero so he can fight. So he chooses this this cameraman Hal Stewart, who's seen as very nerdy, kind of overweight. He has this crush on Roxanne Ritchie, this news reporter, who's also the love interest of Megamind in the movie. Megamind sets sights on Hal becoming this new superhero, and he gives him these powers, but things go wrong, and then Hal, now known as Titan, he tries to win Roxanne rejects him, and then Hal, or Titan, becomes the supervillain. And now Megamind has to stop him, and it becomes this huge thing towards the end. There's a whole pile of evidence as to why gingers are treated so differently that I am very tempted to just simply say it's just simply white supremacy and just move on. But to expand a little bit more, it's what I said earlier, being it's related to biblical context of red hair being perceived as disloyalty, it's not meant to be trusted, and also it's linked to sensuality and sin. But another one is just simply white Western beauty standards, where sort of ableist thinking reigns supreme. We only want this type of people to reproduce. Only this type of person is better. The beauty standard of the typical beauty standard is just simply blonde hair and blue eyes, more specifically a certain type of blonde is more preferable, but brunette people are obviously part of the beauty standard too. Basically only a certain type of white people is considered fit in a society, well really rich white people. I mean, the only types of white people who are truly seen as fit in society are rich, pretty white people. And poor white people are kind of treated a little bit like trash. This othering comes out in different ways, I mentioned, on how it's portrayed on screen with black women, and how redhead women are both portrayed in some ways as being over sexualized, while black men and redheaded men kind of like go very opposite sides of the or two very opposite sides of the coin, with red-haired men being seen as like more weak, and they're kind of like being treated as like ugly, which can happen to both. And these otherings is completely different to how black people and other POCs have been discriminated against, even though with white redheads it's so micro, it's still valid that because of this othering that they would feel sort of like left out of society at times, or like feeling a little bit like an outsider at times in their own community, because of the fact that they have features that they cannot control. And this is where I have to give some tough love to my people. We are too welcoming and too forgiving. It's okay to just simply not let everybody in. And it's okay to just be very picky on who gets to, quote, come to the cookout. Because we do live in a society that pretty much hates us and doesn't mind seeing us die. Doesn't mind seeing us die a painful, gruesome, and horrible death. Even participate in it themselves. Like, it's okay to be very selective on certain types of people to let into your life, especially as black folks. It's okay, because again, like I keep saying, like, we just live in a society that we're like, the general public just hates us. And the thing that kind of like irked me was the fact that we are so quick to open the door for white people and say, welcome, like, come on in. But we're so kind of like picky and so hesitant when it comes to queer black people who are mixed with X race, and black people who have disabilities, black people with different religious practices. It's all crickets. It's all crickets. Or even like, oh yeah, black people who come from different countries who are not from America. It's all crickets. And it's embarrassing that it took someone else to bring up the fact that redheads haven't always been that solidarity when it came to us, with Halle Bailey being casted as Ariel, and then all hell broke loose, and they just like said so many like racist things on the internet. And then with this like gingers are black thing, it led to them feeling very comfortable to get very racist pretty fast. And we obviously like knew this was going to happen. When it came to like just simply like talking about like black and like redheaded duos, that was like fine. When it came, but like when people were actually like starting to get like very like serious and started saying things like, oh, easy white chocolate, or like easy, like it's just embarrassing to like, it's not to say like it's wrong for, you know, for us to have some community with white people, but it's like the standards we hold for white people are so low. It's so incredibly low. Like, I saw a TikTok the other day that's been sticking through my head ever since. It was like a reaction to like I think a YouTube video on Olay and Friends talking about Laverne Cox's like ex-boyfriend. But like the woman said that like all a white person has to say is, I like you. And all the standards of like vetting someone out, like seeing how their character is, like it all goes out the window because like that white person said that they like you. So, you know, that's all you need to hear. And it's so embarrassing how true that is, how we all can like fall victim into this. I've fallen victim to this sometimes in the past, and like knowing what I know now, like obviously like growing up, it's like we need to like do a better job and like hold white people to very reasonable standard to not just simply not be racist, but also like prove that like they are a true ally to us. For example, like if you have a partner who's white, like if you weren't in the room, would they still like advocate for black people in general? Would they call out racist people? Would they call out their own family if you weren't in the room? With you in the room and both when you're in the room and not in the room, would they still be able to like, are they able to like fight against the anti-blackness in the world? Like, do they truly believe and see you as an equal? Do they truly believe and see black people as just as equal to them in general? That's what I'm saying. But like, the standards for like white people that we have is like very low to the point where like a white person can just simply say, "Oh, I like black people," or "Oh, you cool," for clout online, and we'll just simply eat it up. I feel like we shouldn't let white people in our spaces so easily. That's just my opinion. Like let's kind of like do more background checks and see about their character the most before we just so easily just like, before you come rush into the door and open the door up for them, like maybe like see if they're actually like not a piece of shit first. That can be for anyone, but like especially like with white people, like really make sure that they're not a racist piece of shit, because there's a huge line of history where like there's like a lot of history of white people kind of not always being there's like a lot of history of white people proving that they're just not really that trustworthy. And then they do get offended when we say that like we don't really trust you at times, and they might ask like, well, why do you feel like that? Like, history, I don't really think that we can truly say that we learned our lesson and we'll do better next time if something like this happens. I can't really speak for the majority of us, obviously. Like some people might learn from this and not really like jump to may not like jump to like saying like, hey, welcome in. I don't know, but like only time will tell. But I will say that I get that it was a joke. It was a joke. Some people took it as a joke, and I liked how it sparked like a funny like connection of like how we see redheads in some black TV shows. I liked that discourse. But then when it became too like serious, when people were actually saying like, oh, gingers are like white gingers, more specifically, are truly like black people, they're not white, that's where I kind of like stopped, because I was like, what? We have to remember that like white gingers, they're still white, they still benefit from white supremacy, they still have white privilege in society, even though they are othered and made to feel like an outcast. At the end of the day, they're still white. I'm sorry, but like y'all are still white. However, that doesn't mean it's not possible for us to like have some solidarity and to be in community with each other as like allies or like as friends. Like for individuals, I've known redheads throughout my life, and like some of them are like good and some of them are but like it is possible to like have some sort of like solidarity. I feel like in order for that to happen, I feel like white gingers would have to acknowledge they do have white privilege in this world, like any other white person, if they truly like want to be allies to like marginalized people, like POCs in particular, well, black and POCs in particular, and use their voices and actually speak up and also like listen to us when we talk about our experiences and are advocating for ourselves too, because they need to understand that their voices have more weight that unfortunately when they talk, like specifically when a white man talks, his voice carries more weight than my voice will as a black man in society. My voice carries some weight because I am male, because of the male privilege that I do have, but it will only fall on so many ears because I am black. But a white man's voice, when he's speaking out, will reach a more wider audience. And that is the society that we live in. And white people know this, but they choose not to like speak out all the time. So that's where solidarity, it always feels like so... Anyway, I feel like it is possible for there to be like some sort of like allyship between redheads and, you know, black people. But that's... a lot of that work has to come from gingers, I feel, because they have to acknowledge and use their voices. And I'm not saying that they all don't use their voice, because there was also gingers who were calling out who were calling out the people who were making racist TikToks, and I appreciate that. So it's not completely, it wasn't a total shit show, that whole trend, but like, I really hope that never happens again, because it's just another example of how we as black people are so quick to accept white folks into our space so quickly, and how we're so selective on how our own is welcomed in our community. You know, I feel like, I don't know. That's all I kind of have to say about this whole gingers are black thing. So, anyway, thank you for listening to the podcast. Let's discuss. You can find the podcast on Spotify, YouTube. You can follow the podcast on social media at Instagram and TikTok at Let's Discuss Podcast _ all lowercase. And you can follow me, Nick.Marshall02, all lowercase. And if you've been listening to this on YouTube, you can like, comment, and subscribe if you want to like join the club, if you made it this far. And I will talk to you guys in the next one. Alright, we'll talk soon. Alright, bye.